anything that has focus is going to grow and expand. And if you're focusing on the negative, your brain is only going to be looking for evidence of the negative.
And I visualize myself what it would feel like to cross that finish line and to see my kids there and what that would feel like. And here's the crazy thing.
I'll never forget that thought. Wow, I didn't realize that I was stupid. And my next thought was, well, how would you know you're stupid if you're stupid? There is scientific data that proves that cancer, disease, illness doesn't happen in the physical body first. It happens in the energetic field. The energetic field updates the body. As you hear these words, your life, the accumulation of your life, of what you're experiencing, what you can do, can't do, all of that is purely the limitation of what you believe you're capable of achieving. You are limited purely by your mind.
Rudi, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge. Good to see you, brother.
It is so good to see you again. Thank you for your time today, brother.
My pleasure. I got to say, man, you definitely, you sound a lot cooler than a lot of people. I really, really love the accent. And but I'm sure for you, maybe this is not the accent, but you just sound a lot cooler than most.
That's so funny. I actually forget I have an accent until somebody says, "Hey man, where are you from? You have an accent." I joke a lot. I tell people I'm actually from Kentucky and I just made this up.
I don't know, man. I'd love to hear you say Louisville. I don't know if you say it like that though or not.
No, it's just Louisville to me. I actually, funny enough, I lived in Florence, Kentucky for 5 years. I don't live there anymore, but I lived there years and years and years ago. And so that's why I make that joke.
Oh my gosh. So I used to go to Florence. I used to go to Kentucky a lot for work when I was in corporate America selling surgical device sales. So I was always in the hospitals in Kentucky because it was part of my territory. But yeah, where are you from originally?
I'm from a small town in South Africa called Knysna, in just one of the most beautiful parts of the world called the Garden Route. And it's very, very much like the area that I live in today, which is Wilmington, North Carolina. And so it's small, little, cute coastal towns. I live a busy life, and so I really like that when I'm home is quiet. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. We don't even have great fine dining here. It's just really, really just very small, beautiful little town, very majestic.
Do you like being, kind of that far away from sort of, I guess, civilization? Do you like just being removed from that?
I say that Wilmington is very, very civilized, but it's just we don't have like the mass. I mean, I've lived in Miami, I've lived in big cities, and where there's just so much going on, and I really do love the quiet of Wilmington. I love to, get in my car and within a minute or two, I'm at the beach, or if I get on my boat, I'm on a private island that's 11 miles long and there's no one there, and you can just walk and play, and the kids can run and the dogs can run, and it just feels to me very romantic. It's like this notion I have of what does it feel like to live a beautiful life that we get in the US. And so I don't care very much for the hustle and the bustle. Most days I have to be in a plane, a train, an automobile. I'm somewhere in front of someone. My time isn't always my own. And so anytime I get to go back into my shell, then, that to me is a gift.
And you're married too, right? Aniston?
Yeah.
Right?
Aniston.
How long has been married?
14 years come May. So
nice.
14 beautiful years. I know it's not a tremendous amount of time, but it, is by far my greatest success. I put my marriage up there as one of the things that I hail as the most successful parts of my life. We just have an incredible relationship. I married my best friend, my partner, my soulmate, and she's an amazing mother. So it's amazing for us just to get to see life through each other's eyes.
Well, I just listened to your podcast with her this morning on resentment, and I was like, oh, this is really, really good. And to be honest, man, I loved how real you were in that show, in that particular show. That's been a hot topic in our community here this month, and is overcoming resentment. And I just love how real you guys were. It's like, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows here. We've got the skills, we do the thing, but there are things that kind of creep up on us, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love how real that was. And you guys have 2 kids.
Yeah, we have 2 kids. I have an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter who is, as any other daughter, I would imagine, turning 26, just years above her age it's incredible to be able to see them just live life and their personalities come through and have that constant measure of success is how are you doing as a parent, because you're always getting that honest haptic feedback through your kids.
It's you're the age, they're pretty close together because you said she's going to be turning 10 here soon, right? So how far apart are they in age?
They're 15 months apart.
So you almost had Irish twins.
Almost had Irish twins. I mean, I was going for twins, and then
you're going for twins.
You know what? It's like I grew up with an older brother, and he was my best friend growing up. And so I always thought, like, I want to give my kids that. I want my kids to be so close in age that they just love each other. But boys and girls have like an inbuilt rivalry. And so they don't have that closeness today, but I do believe that that will come in time. And, as like little toddlers, like obviously they were just inseparable. They played together all the time. But now that they're finding their personalities and they've got their different friend circles, that's changed somewhat. But I really do see value in having that your home community is stronger than any community you could have outside of your home. And that's what we fostered with our kids.
Very cool. What made your older brother your best friend?
Firstly, proximity and his stubbornness to never leave me alone. So we just spent a tremendous amount of time together. But, we just shared a lot of common interests, things that we did, what we enjoyed doing, how we ran around and played. I had mentioned I grew up in a tiny little town in in South Africa that's very similar to Wilmington, North Carolina. But I grew up on an island, and there were 280 odd homes on this little island. But, we were always playing in the parks in the middle of the island. We were always playing in the ocean. We were swimming and skiing and paddleboarding and, doing I guess those days it was kayaking, but all kinds of water sports, just always immersed in being active, being outdoors, doing something. I remember my mother in summer coming out with a kettlebell and ringing it to tell us it's time to come home and eat because it was the only way to get us to come back into the house. And that environment to me was just so beautiful. And that's really was one of my biggest driving forces in why I wanted to move to a small town. So my kids could have that quality of life.
That is so cool, man. What have you found that are the differences between raising a son and raising a daughter?
I'm gonna say what I'm sure most people's experiences are. Raising daughters is so much easier than raising sons when they were younger. I don't know what that looks like as they hit the teen years, and I've been told that reverses. But my son will challenge me. He will push me at every turn. He is my greatest teacher in the most beautiful way because he's teaching me patience. He's teaching me resilience. He's also teaching me, what does it look like to live a life when you're not insecure and riddled with anxiety? Because that was my story. I was deeply insecure as a boy. And he is so profoundly confident in who he is and what he's doing. And so sometimes I tell him he's being a little too brash. Like, he needs to come down a notch because there's just too much confidence flowing out of him because there's nothing he cannot do or where he can go. And yet my daughter is just the sweetest, kindest, most generous soul that you've ever met. And so I joke and say, if I had my daughter first, I would have had probably 10 children. My son came first, and I said, all right, 2 and we're done, because he really was. He came out the womb ready to go.
That is so funny, man. I have 4 boys, and they couldn't all be more different. Like, all of them are just like their own individual. I've got a stubborn one. I got an easy one. And when I say easy, I mean just not as stubborn like as the other one, right? And I've got one that's playful, one that's sensitive. Like, it's just like this buffet of different personalities, but I've truly, truly enjoyed it. How did you get into the work that you're doing today? And I would love for you to just share with the audience what the work is you're doing today.
I love this question because I think there's value for everybody to hear the answer to the question, but not through my story, but rather to take the response I'm going to give and filter it through their life, through their lens. I believe that every experience that we have in life is a pre-qualification for who we get to become. Everything that you do, whether you were a waiter, you were a gas, attendant, anything that you've done, it's preparing you for the person that you get to be. There's experiences in everything. I did not set out to be a mindset coach. I did not set out to be a high performer. I work with organizations and communities to support people to achieve their highest and their greatest potential. That sounds like a hallmark postcard, like, oh yeah, achieve your highest and greatest potential. But in reality, what I really do is help people to identify the power that is within each individual and then get them to live their greatest life. If you are riddled with fear and stress and anxiety, you're going to make choices and decisions and take actions that align with that kind of behavior, which will drive even more. And so essentially, you dig yourself into a really deep hole. You stay in that hole so long that you identify as that kind of person. So that's who you are, and that's what your life looks like. But I help people change their lives. And so whether it's going into a company because they hire me because they want to make more money or they want their people to be more productive, I don't come in wanting to make them more productive. I come in wanting to make them more happy, give them more life skills, teach them how to reduce stress, fear, and anxiety. Very tangible, tactical tools of being able to understand the power of how their minds work, or to create creativity, inspiration to flow to them so that they can start to live more abundant, joyful lives. And I do that within organizations because that's where people spend the bulk of their time. However, the work is very much tied to the individual, and it's not necessarily tied to any particular person, age, group, gender, or even personality type. It's literally for anybody to want to be able to achieve their highest and their greatest potential. I was 16 years old sitting in a high school gymnasium, and I remind you, I was very insecure. I thought I was the dumbest kid in the school. I didn't come from money. I was in an environment where most of the kids I went to school with, their parents were multimillionaires, and that's not where we came from. So it, at every turn, showed me I just wasn't good enough and I wasn't worthy, and that's how I processed my life. And so a guy walks into our school one day, and he's a business coach, and he's come to speak to the school. He is the father of one of the students, and he takes the stage and he says, "You can have, and you can be, and you can do, and you can achieve anything." Man, and I'm sitting in this room thinking, holy smokes, this guy is incredible. You know, like I've never felt this alive. Like I can be and I can do and I can achieve. And I had that feeling of like, Rudi, this is what you're going to do with your life. You know, on different platforms, I've said it almost felt like God whispered in my ear and said, Rudi, this is who you're going to be when you grow up. You know, you're going to do this. And I was alive. Every fiber of my body and being was at attention. And man, was I excited. But the moment he left that room and I went back into my life, the insecurity came back, and I realized, you know, who's going to listen to me and what do I have to say and what worth do I have in the world? I was reading books by Tony Robbins and all kinds of really powerful leaders and looking at the things that they had achieved in their lives and then thinking, who would ever listen to me if I was to stand on any soapbox and say, you can have and be and do and achieve anything, you can live your highest potential. And then people would look at me and say, dude, you broke. You're not even doing well in school. Like, you don't have good friends. Like what are you going to teach me? And it just reinforced again, I wasn't good enough and I wasn't worthy. I put all my value in, I needed to prove to the world that I was worth something. And so I thought worthiness came from money. So I set out to make money. And I made a tremendous amount of money at a very young age. And I owned 3 different companies. I had millions in the bank. I drove a sports car. I had a 2-story loft apartment. I just thought that every physical thing around me would make me feel like the man that I was aspiring to become. But I never stopped feeling like that little insecure, broken little boy. And it was then that I realized that, you know, money doesn't buy you happiness, which we've all heard, but to feel it, viscerally feel that, to notice that all the relationships I had were the same quality relationships I had when I was a child, that outside of me making money, I never changed. I was still that broken little child. I, at 26 years old, went on an internal journey. And that was me really challenging my thoughts, challenging my feelings, challenging the relationships I have. Like, why am I dating someone who I think is cheating on me? Why do I have friends that steal money from me? Why do I, have business partners that take advantage of me? Like, I just started challenging everything around my life. But at the same time, I also started challenging, am I really stupid? I'm like, well, if I created all of this, could I really be that stupid? If I have 60 employees at 26 years old, am I really that stupid? If I've done this and this and this, and I started stacking evidence of who I am. Eventually, And that, I say, eventually took 10 years. At 36 years old was the first time I started actually speaking. It was the first time I started standing in front of an audience or started taking value in what I was doing and how I could create an impact. But those 10 years from 26 to 36 were pivotal years. And that's why I say every experience you're having right now is pivotal in who you get to become. It's supporting you in the life that you get to live. And so I went through a tremendous amount of pain, tremendous amount of suffering. I had a lot of bad relationships, I lost a lot of money, I made a lot of bad choices, and all of those experiences really qualified me, because today when I go to work and I talk to anyone in life or in business, I am 100% qualified to be able to resonate with the experiences that they're having and support them in creating that shift or creating that change. My experience took me 20 years from 16 all the way through until 36. But I can help somebody in a very short amount of time, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 months, for them to lessen their time in that level of pain. And so I spend the bulk of my time just reminding people of the divinity that is flowing to them and through them, and that they can truly have and be and do anything, but they are the reason that they're living the life that they're living. And that's really hard to hear. You might have lost everything because someone stole from you and you feel like you're a victim in that. And I'm going to be the first person to tell you that, you have to take accountability for what you did in that situation and what was the value and the gain and the experience in that situation, because you're not qualified to do whatever it is you need to do next that you weren't qualified to do prior to that moment. And there's so much value in that. And so I'm just really honored to be in the place that I'm in life, to be able to help and support so many people to live happier, more joyful lives. Because at the end of the day, you know this better than anybody. When we feel really good in our skin and what we do and how we do it, we come home, man, and we teach that to our kids, to our partners, and they're learning from us every day. They're either learning what to do or what not to do. And so my greatest joy is really seeing people when they go home and the impact that they make when they get home.
I love that story and I love that journey. I love how authentic it was. Anybody looking at your life, sports car, millions of dollars in the bank, beautiful 2-story loft, all these things going on, would be like, dude, congratulations, you have arrived, right? But you didn't feel that way. All the money and all the possessions in the world weren't doing that. What was the missing ingredient? You mentioned obviously these insecurities, these things that you battled with. What were the things that held you back specifically?
Your question is really important. I was 6 years old when I walked into school for the first time, 6.5 years old. And in my first grade of school, the teacher called me stupid. And she made me sit on a stupid chair that she called the dunce's chair. And she had a hat that was a pointed red witch's hat and had the word dunce written on it. And she put the dunce's hat on my head. And I wasn't the only kid that was ever put on the dunce's hat, but I only remember what it felt like to be me on that dunce's chair, being named the dunce. And she used the word stupid and put me on the chair. And I remember the thought, thinking I didn't know I was stupid. I'll never forget that thought. Wow, I didn't realize that I was stupid. And my next thought was, well, how would you know you're stupid if you're stupid? And that was me already identifying, well, I must be stupid. And so I never studied in school. I never really showed up. I never worked hard. I never put in any effort because I didn't think, what was the point, man? I'm stupid. I'm not going to do well. When a teacher asked a question, I wouldn't put my hand up. And on the occasion where I was called out, I got the answer wrong. And when I got the answer wrong, the kids would laugh at me. And if they laughed at me, it validated that I was in fact stupid. And so when I started to make money and I started to create some semblance of success in my life, it was only in one area, and that area was wealth, right? But there's so many quadrants to life. You have to have health and well-being and relationships and faith, and there's all these other areas that I was failing in horribly, but I had money in my bank account. When I would wake up in the morning, I would put on a pair of jeans, and no, this sounds really stupid. This is 20 years ago. I put on a pair of $2,000 jeans thinking I would feel like the man, like a label pair of jeans. And I felt like that stupid little 6-year-old boy sitting on the dancer's chair, like the really, really dumb kid sitting on the dancer's chair. I went out and bought a diamond-crusted Breitling watch, with diamond markers, diamond bezel, so that anytime I walked into a room, you wouldn't question, is he successful? You would just know because you would see it. And it's still, I felt like a stupid kid. Just over and over and over that feeling of, There was nothing that I could do externally that would validate the internal pain that I was going through. But now, I said something earlier that I'm guaranteed triggered majority of your audience. And that was, if you're going through an experience, you have to take accountability for your part in that experience. So let me touch on that for a second. So here I've had this life of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. And I want to preface, man, I've got loving parents. I come from a loving home. We were 3 boys. We all hung out together. We all played together. We all had a great childhood. But there were moments that were defining for me. And all of those moments really were my pre-qualification for what I do today. The bulk of people that I talk to, which is 98% of the people that I talk to, suffer from debilitating fear, anxiety, stress, depression, PTSD. Like, they're really struggling. And everything externally looks like it's good. The bulk of my clients are CEOs or presidents of really big companies that have, $1 million bonus. They have big houses. They've got cars and the trophy husband or wife. But when I talk to them, they say, I am so unhappy. I don't know why. Why am I so unhappy? I have a beautiful relationship, or I have a beautiful family. I have a beautiful job, but I'm just so unhappy. And that's because they too have placed their value outside of them and not looked at who they are internally. And so when you start to question who you are, how you show up, what you do, and what fills your cup, you start to realize that those things that you're looking for from an external validation perspective is never going to make you who you think you want to be. That's an internal job. And you rebuild your belief in who you are, who you're going to be, how you're going to show up. It changes everything, and lives begin to change. The beautiful part of that is that when people start to fill their internal cup, stop looking for the external validation, they end up making more money. They end up improving their health. They end up improving their relationships. Like, all these other areas change, but it really has to start within themselves. My wife and I started a podcast years ago, and we named it the Empowered Life Podcast. And, it's a word that doesn't really exist. Everyone wants to say empowered with EM, and ours is empowered, IN, because the internal power is what resides within each and every single one of us. We get to control our thoughts. We get to control our feelings. And I ended up understanding, and through 10 years of studying, looking at neuroscience, the brain, how does it work? How are emotions processed? How can we create shifts in our emotional state? All of that is in our control. And when I would wake up, and your question was, what was that thing? And it was because I woke up and I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I was good enough for a better relationship, so I dated somebody who cheated on me. I didn't think I was good enough for partners that wouldn't take advantage of me. I didn't think that I was good enough, to have, friends that wouldn't steal money from me. Like, these were things that I allowed to happen in my life because I had this narrative of, Rudi, who's going to want to hang out with you? You've got to take what you can get. You've got to have these quality relationships. And when I realized that the thought that said, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy, that was put into my brain, was actually a chemical dump based on an experience from my past under the age of 7. And that I have the control, once I have the awareness, to catch the thought and change the thought, which changes the chemical, which changes the physiological state in the body, which changes every single behavior. So I want to explain that really simplistically. If you wake up and think, man, you know what, I'm so stupid, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, you're going to make decisions from that vantage point. But if you wake up and you say, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, and that thought lands in your mind, and then you pause and you're like, well, is that even true? Let me look at my life. Let me look at what I've done. The experience I shared with you when I was 26 years old, taking stock of what I am and what I've done, and realizing, actually, you know what, I am pretty smart, and you know what, I am a nice guy, and actually I am deserving. Now you're starting to change how your brain processes information. 95% of everything that people do is unconscious. How you parent, how you talk to your kids, how you interact with your spouse, how you react when the steak knife goes down versus up, or, the toilet paper's up versus down, or how somebody treats you when somebody cuts you off in traffic and your finger goes up and you're screaming 4-letter words and you're frustrated. All of that, none of that is you. That's an unconscious program based on how you reacted to similar information under the age of 7. And my work is to remind people that you can take control of the unconscious mind. If you are less than 5% conscious and you've achieved anything and everything that you've achieved in life, who would you be if you were 10% conscious, 20% conscious, 30% conscious? And that's what I love, is to remind people that we can take control of the mind And that's where people produce profound results. That's where companies go from a couple $100 million to, billions. That's where, $100,000 business goes to $1 million business. That's how a guy goes from never having a relationship to being in love and married in a year. Like, it's creating shifts and changes in how we think and how we feel. I would never have been qualified to do that had I not had all of my life's experience up to that point.
How long did it take you to unravel that? Or do you ever really unravel that and maybe leverage that type of experience as fuel? Does that question make sense?
Your question's actually so brilliant. I want your audience to know why it's so brilliant, because you asked a number of questions, but in one, and I want to address each one. It took me 10 years, but it can take you 10 minutes, 10 days. It really depends on how quickly are you going to hear the information, apply the information. So if I have a call with someone, I guarantee you I can create a profound shift in anyone's life inside of 2 hours. A 2-hour phone call, 100% guaranteed improved marked change in your life. But how long are you going to stay that way? Meaning you've been who you were longer than you've been who you want to be. So we can create a change. Somebody thinks they all of a sudden produce something really different, and then their life goes up. I tell this story. I met a guy in the middle of COVID, and I was working with individuals because, companies stopped hiring high performance coaches. And this guy came to me. He was in his 30s, never been in a relationship, didn't have any money, was moving into his mom's house, and he was just debilitated. He was like, I can't believe it. I'm 30 something. I think I'm 32 years old, and I'm going to move back in with my mom. And within 8 months of working with me, the guy had made over $1 million. He had $800,000 in his bank account. He started an e-commerce business. He was in a long-term relationship. We were all locked up in our houses in North America. This guy was traveling around the world from LA. He was now traveling around the world. He was in Thailand calling me on vacation. And you've got to ask what created that change. Well, that created change came from him understanding his thoughts, his feelings, his triggers, his emotions, how to react. He elevated his communication style and what his expectations were. And these were very quick and easy things that he could do. And what did he do? He made $1 million. He created a change. He fell in love. He had this relationship. But the guy called me months later. And he said to me, man, I need to work with you again. And I was excited. I was like, this is amazing. What are we building next? And he was like, no, I need to rebuild. And I'm like, well, what happened? He's like, well, I lost everything. I'm like, what do you mean you lost everything? Like, how do you, in my mind, I'm thinking, how the hell do you lose $800,000 in 4 months? And he's like, well, I had fraud on my account. Somebody stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. I bought some stock that didn't sell, product that didn't sell, and now it's sitting in a warehouse. And, I've got this, and I didn't pay this tax. And so he had lost all this money. And I said to him, when did you start to lose your money? And he was like, man, in November was when it really started to take that negative turn. And I'm like, okay, when did you stop doing the work that I teach? And he was like, oh, he was like, you know what, around October, I think September maybe. And I'm like, yeah, probably around September. And I was like, last question for you before we start working again. Why did you stop? And he was like, man, I felt so good. I didn't need to do it anymore. So the crux of that story and why I love the story so much is he rebuilt beautifully. But when we create a change, it's usually because we're living a life that we're not happy with, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe your kids don't want to talk to you, or your wife says, if you don't change, I'm going to leave. And so you realize something has to change. So you've got to be different. So you start to change. And then life gets really good. And then everyone treats you with respect and with love, and you've got the thing that you want. Then you stop doing the work because, well, everything's great now. And then your brain goes back to the old chronic habitual patterns of how you used to think, how you used to feel, how you used to talk. And that's why so many people say you can't change. People don't change. A zebra can't change its stripes. Well, the reality is we can change. We do change. My wife is not the same person I married. I literally said this on stage 2 days ago. There was nothing about my wife that is the same as the person that I met. She doesn't even like the same things. She doesn't talk and walk and act the same. What she does, how she shows up, even her name is not the same. Randomly walks into my office one day and says, I'm changing my name, and went from Anna to Aniston. She is a completely different person than who she was. And I didn't hold her to the ideal of who she was. I allowed her to be whoever the hell she wants to be. She gets to be something new. We're supposed to be the caterpillar that turns into the butterfly. And we cannot hold a grudge against the butterfly for once being a caterpillar. And the journey of life is always an evolution, a growth, and a change. And so we are supposed to have that ebb and that flow. But our thoughts and feelings often hold us, if unchecked, into a familiar past. And so we make the same decisions. So if we make the same decisions, we think the same thoughts, we think the same thoughts, we have the same feelings. And so we take the same actions again and again and again. And that's why so many people don't change. And my work is really in helping people identify that we don't have to create change in pain. Life doesn't have to suck to change. What if we just want to change? Like my wife, what if we just want to be better? What if we just want to do more? What if we just want to create something else? And it's constantly a state of growth and change. I'll give you one more example. My wife came to me one day and said, I want to study numerology. And then all of a sudden she became a master numerologist, not for anything. She doesn't charge for the service. She doesn't use it to market or to make money. It cost her thousands of dollars. And I don't even know how many hours to study and take these courses over years, just because she was curious. And then one day she comes to me, she says, I want to write a book. And then she wants to be an author. And then one day she comes to me, she says, I want to leave my job. I want to go work for this other company. And then it's like, there's always growth and always change. And, when we're in our personal power, when we know who we are, where we're going, what we're doing, those changes are beautiful. But far too many people resist those changes. They don't understand the change. And for a default mechanism to protect how they feel, they end up staying the same. And we should never stay the same. We should grow, we should change, we should evolve.
I love what you're saying. I have so many questions. Doing the work that I'm doing, I can relate to the dunce cap. It's a lot of it has to do with how I grew up and the things I experienced and the things that I didn't want for my own kids. Let me ask you a question though. And I've never been able to ask, I don't think anybody else this, but I think for a long time, up until maybe a couple years ago, I did this mission for the sole purpose of not wanting to repeat what my childhood was like, and also not repeat, I was kind of a disaster as a dad. I wasn't abusive and I wasn't anything like that, but I was not nearly, I didn't know what I knew now, right? And I'm not saying every day is perfect, sunshine and rainbows. It's not, but it's dramatically different, right? But for a long time, I went full force with this mission because of the things I didn't want. Well, now I flipped that script and I was like, well, what do I want? What are the things I do want? Do you think that most people, and here's the other context of that. I didn't feel very fulfilled doing it the previous way. And I feel way more fulfilled. More opportunities have come my way. More clients want to work with me. More people want to work in our community. And all I did was change that mindset just a little bit. But to be honest, I have no idea if there's psychology behind that, if there's truth to that, or fulfillment is linked to going after things you want versus, doing the things that you don't want. Does that make sense of what I'm saying? Because I think a lot of people make a change because they're like, I just don't want this anymore. So they'll run as far away from that as possible. And they have the 2-story loft. They have the sports cars, right? They've got $1 million in the bank. And they're just like, why do I not feel great right now? Is that linked at all?
So they're actually anchoring themselves in the perpetual past, in the thing that they want to avoid, right? So in the psychology of what you just said, if you're saying, I don't want to be a bad father, I don't want to make the mistakes that my father made or that I used to make or whatever, you're focusing on what? Your focus isn't on who you want to be, it's who you don't want to be. And what you focus on expands. We have to just look at the laws of the universe. Anything that has focus is going to grow and expand. And if you're focusing on the negative, your brain is only going to be looking for evidence of the negative. It's only going to be reinforcing you evidence of the negative. And I think I need to give your audience a little more context to the brain, and I'm going to do this in the most simplistic way possible. Human brain picks up information consciously and unconsciously at a rate of 10 million bits of data every single second. So sight, sound, smell, all around you. Imagine you're in New York City, taxis, cars, horns, bicycles, horses, police officers, whistles, car doors opening and closing. There's just so much stimulation. Then there's smell coming out of the sewers. Somebody's smoking a joint right next to you. Like, it's just this barrage of just so much stimulation.
Sounds like my last trip there.
I was going to say, that sounds like every trip I've had to New York. Yeah. And that coming at you, all of that information is going into your unconscious mind. There's studies that if you walk down New York City and you get hypnotized at the end of the walk and they say to you, we want you to tell us about the conversation that the guy had that was next to you talking to you would be able to unconsciously go back and pull all that information because your brain's storing 10 million bits of data every single second. Sight, sound, smell, everything's going in. But you're not aware of it consciously, meaning if I just said, hey, Larry, tell me, what did that guy say back then? You'd be like, what guy? Like, I didn't even see him. But your brain draws the information. Now, here's why you don't know about everything that you've seen, because your brain divides all information into two channels. Is this going to potentially cause me pleasure, this information, or does it have the power or the potential to cause me pain? It's going to do anything and everything to avoid pain. So it's going to look at all of your surroundings, all of the information that's around you, and it's now going to filter it through everything that you've been focusing on. So if you're focusing on, I don't want to be a bad dad. Oh, I don't want to make these mistakes anymore. Oh, I don't want to be a horrible husband. Oh, I don't want to be grumpy. I don't want to. So your brain is now not focusing on, oh, I want to be the opposite of that. It's focusing on, well, you don't want to be grumpy. What here can make you grumpy? And it shows you everything that can make you grumpy because it's trying to protect you from that thing you're trying to hide. And so when you reverse engineer that and you say, you know what, I don't want to focus on all the negative things. I want to focus on the positive things. I want to focus on what I do want or who I want to be. So in my case, 26 years old and saying, am I really stupid? You know what? I'm not stupid. I can't be stupid if I created this, if I did this, if I did that. And you know what? Am I a good guy? I am a good guy. How am I a good guy? Well, I did this, I did that. Well, what are my intentions? Well, I have good intentions. So I stacked all that evidence. And when I look at all the evidence of who I am, where I'm going, what it is that I'm doing, now my brain starts to look at the information, not as, yes, Rudi, you are stupid, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, which validates all of that. I am now only focusing in on the things, and the brain is now going to draw information to me to reinforce that. So remember I said 10 million bits of data. That is all going into your unconscious mind. Your brain filters that down based on what you were thinking or feeling last to 50 bits of data. And you are consciously, presently aware of only 50 bits of information at any time based on that formula. 10 million bits all the way down to 50. So if you are nervous, anxious, scared, worried, and you get on a subway train, you're going to look around and see the guy that's giving you the eye. You're going to see the dude that looks like he's going to pickpocket you. You're going to see the dad that smacks his child on the bum for making a noise. And there's all these things that are going to elicit fear and emotion out of you. But if you were to get onto that same subway train, but before that, you were getting on feeling safe, surrounded, protected, guided, happy, excited for the day ahead, your brain's going to show you the little old lady that was just given the seat and somebody else stood up and said, why don't you take the seat? Or you're going to see the couple sitting holding hands. You're going to hear the guy on the phone in the corner telling his partner, oh, I love you and thank you for this encouragement. I can't wait to see you tonight, whatever. Your brain will have heard all the same information, but it will reinforce you need to stay the way that you were thinking and feeling last. The bulk of my work is to teach people to pay attention to what they are thinking and what they're feeling, because that's going to drive the brain. It's going to drive what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what's coming in, and how you're changing. So your question was really important. You need to focus on who you want to be and expand that. You need to focus on what you want to have and expand that. The alternative is you're diminishing what it is that you want and bringing more in of what you don't want.
This is fascinating. I'm putting so many pieces together here. And this is, I got to tell you, Rudi, this is deeper than mindset work than we've talked about in the past on the podcast. And some things are really, really clear to me. I was recently taught a statement about 6 months ago as you and I are recording, but when the show launches about, quite some time ago, that your frequency is what you'll frequently see. And so, if you're looking for abundance and gratitude and all these different things, and I got to be honest, man, I'm kind of a science guy. Like I got a bachelor's degree in sports med with nutrition, so I'm kind of like a data guy. But so like the woo-woo stuff, I'm like, whatever, right? But there's so much truth to that, and I've learned that. The times where I have worked with a coach myself, right? And I work with a coach every single year. Actually, as I'm talking to you today, it's the longest I've ever worked with a coach consistently weekly for a really long time. I've been with this guy for 9 months, and it's completely changed everything. And what I noticed was, as soon as I started working with this coach, because we started doing some of the same work, is that I think at the time I had one-on-one client, and then suddenly I had 9 in a month. It was like, I'm like, what? And one of them was I can't say who he is, but he's a well-known rock star, like celebrity. And I was like, I told my wife, I was like, you have no idea who just became a client of mine. And she goes, who? And I told her, and she's like, oh my God, like that's crazy. I was like, yeah. She goes, what's changed? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, the only thing I can possibly think of that's really changed is the energy I have when I interact with other people and just kind of how I'm seeing the world. I used to see problems to fix, and now I try to look for opportunities. I always go to a situation now, try to leave people better than what I found them. I was with a client actually a couple of weeks ago, and we went out to dinner, and we were at a Mexican place. I dropped a chip on the floor, and I reached down and picked it up. Before I reached down and picked it up, he goes, I saw that. And I reached down, I picked it up. He goes, why'd you do that? He goes, there's people here that'll do that. I was like, I can't do it. I was like, because I worked in the restaurant. I remember what it felt like when people just left their crap everywhere, didn't clean up anything. And I was like, and it's kind of demoralizing. I was like, I don't want to leave this waiter with more of a mess than what he came with. And that was, and it hasn't stopped. I'm actually now at a point where I'm turning clients away, and I've never done that. But I think there's a lot of truth to like how you see the world. But another question I have for you is, I've noticed, and maybe I'm newer to like this level of thinking, because I used to be so much maybe you and I are like very similar. Like maybe I did this mission like your 26-year-old self, where I just wanted to create a better life because I just didn't want that was behind me, right? That being like, I just don't want that, and I don't want this, so I'm just going to do this, versus going at it very differently like you and I are talking about. The question that I have for you though is, it's kind of based on the podcast I heard with you and Aniston this morning, where when I first heard the introduction, I was like, okay, so Rudi and Aniston are going to talk about how they don't have any resentment and their life is perfect. And that's not what I heard. What I heard is this is still a battle, right? This is still a thing, but we look at it differently. I'm so curious, and even like selfishly, like, does that battle, and let's just call it your 1.0 self-thinking and 2.0 self-thinking, does that battle ever really go away? I mean, do you ever really like fully evolve into the 2.0 to where the 1.0 guy doesn't even exist anymore? Or is it just always like this evolution where he's still kind of there wanting to pull you back into bad habits and mindset?
I'm going to give you an answer that is short and then an answer that is long and detailed. So okay. You're never going to 100% eradicate the emotional trappings of who you used to be. It's just how long do you stay there? So what I mean is, if opportunity comes and you all of a sudden feel insecure or not good enough or dumb or unworthy, that's the brain remembering a past triggered emotion memory. It's trying to protect you. For most people that don't do this work, they stay in that state where they then become controlled by that emotion, and then they make decisions from it. So they self-sabotage, they don't take steps, and then their life doesn't change. When you do the work, which is what you're beautifully articulating today, is, and I'm going to explain this in much more detail, but what happens is you have the emotion, you just pick a different reaction. So then you start to say, actually, you know what, when last time I took a risk, it actually worked out, and then you take that risk, and then you do the next thing, and then your life begins to change. But I want to explain that because you just said you need a little more information. And I want to give you the information because there's going to be people in your audience that are the same as you, because like attracts like, and the experience is going to serve you. And I hope that the answer is going to serve them as well. Very few people teach the work that I teach at the level that I teach it at. And I teach it at this level because people, I believe, need to fully understand in order to create the semblance of change. You have 3 bodies, but you're only aware of one body. You have your mental body, which is where you think your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness to your thoughts. So you think, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, he doesn't like me, she doesn't care for me, whatever. And you are aware that you're having that thought. So you have this body of thoughts. It's the intellect behind the actual thought. Then you have a physical body. The physical body is the body that you can touch and feel, right? So how tall you are, 5 foot, 6 foot, 150, 220 pounds, whatever you are, your physical structure. That's what people can see, feel, and touch. But you also have an energetic body, an energetic field that surrounds you. And this is where I work, in the energetic field. And so if I want to change somebody's life, I change their energy. There is scientific data that proves that cancer, disease, illness doesn't happen in the physical body first. It happens in the energetic field. The energetic field updates the body. So if you want to heal somebody from cancer or disease, you don't heal the body, you change the field. Change the field, the body will update. And we just are now starting to understand the science and the data around this. So I want to explain it to you this way. When you think a thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, that thought is in the first body, the awareness. It then updates the physical body. So now you've got the physical body. Consciously, you think the thought, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. Well, the frontal lobe fires a little pathway all the way through to the limbic brain. Limbic brain takes a chemical equivalent of that thought, dumps it into the bloodstream through the spine. That goes into the body. That process of taking the thought, interpreting it into a chemical, putting it into the body is called emotion. So the emotion goes into the body of, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. Well, what does that feel like? Anxiety in the stomach, your palms get sweaty, your shoulders pull forward, you break eye contact. That is insecurity. That's not good enough. That's not worthy. That's the chemical processed in the body. Now that information is updating the energy around you. So the energetic frequency around you is now drawing those experiences to you. Everything in the universe is working on simple principles of like attracts like. And if you are thinking and feeling things of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, don't want to repeat the past, I want to run away, you're anchoring your energetic field into the past. But it's attracting future experiences to match the same. So you will continue to experience the same. So I'll prove it to you. Go back to before the marriage you're in now, right? Before you are in the relationship you're in now. How many relationships did you have where you dated the same person? They look the same, sound the same, but man, they always had the same triggers, the same way of treating you. Go to your bank account, right? It's always the same for a certain period of time. And then something shifts in you, something changes, and then you make more money and you hit a new level. And then it's like these glass ceilings that we continue to hit. It's because we believe a certain amount of information, and that information is on 3 levels. I teach alignment, where you get your thoughts to align with your physical body. So your thoughts align with your feelings, then it updates the energy around you. And that's when all of a sudden you go from one-on-one client to 9 in 1 month. A great example of this was my wife and I do this exercise, and I encourage your audience to do this. Every Monday morning, we go for a walk. It's an hour and a half walk every Monday morning, my wife and I. It's how we connect as a husband and wife. And we call them Miracle Mondays. And so we go for a walk, and we spend 2 hours together every day, regardless of what we're doing. But this is our time as a husband and wife. So we'll go for a walk, and I'll say, what do you want to do this week? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Like, what's happening in your world? How can I support you? How have I been as a husband? It's that kind of conversation. And then inevitably, at some point, one of us will turn to the other one and say, what do you want to create this week? Like, what do you want? And I said to her one day, you know what? I want to become a speaker. Like, I work in companies. I obviously host events and retreats for people. A company will hire me and say, hey, we have an event in Mexico. We've got 500 people coming. Will you curate the content? And it's all mindset development, that kind of thing, and sales and whatever. And so I'll do all of that. So I have these events, but they're my clients' events. And I said to my wife, I really want to become a speaker. And she's like, well, what do you mean? You're already speaking. I'm like, no, like a Tony Robbins speaker, like going into companies. I mean, not into companies, going to events and speaking on a circuit. And she's like, oh, okay, well, you should hire a speaking agency. And I'm like, no, I just want to become a speaker. Well, all logic says you get a speaker's reel, you reach out to an agent, you market, you advertise. All I did was said to her on a Miracle Monday morning walk, I would like to be a speaker. And I said to her, I want you to hold the vision of me being a speaker. I want you to imagine me coming to you and celebrating. I'm so excited. I'm going to be speaking. And then I went into my mind. Now, this sounds crazy, but I went into my mind and I created the feeling of what would it feel like to be a speaker, to walk off the stage, not being on the stage, not getting the phone call, not the excitement before. What would it feel like after I left the stage as a successful speaker at an event? And I was like, you know what? That would feel like absolute exhilaration. I would feel like I'm walking 2 inches off the stage, like floating. And I'm like just full of life. I'm excited. And I'm like, what would that feel like in my body? So I create that feeling inside my body. And then I send that feeling ahead of me, like I'm pre-paving the yellow brick road. And as I created that feeling, I then went on with my day. And then the next morning I woke up and did the same thing. And the next morning I woke up and I did the same thing. And I did that in my office in a meditative state. And within a week, I booked 3 speaking engagements. I didn't have any conversations with anyone outside of my wife about being a speaker. Now, here's what's crazy. I knew all of the people that reached out to me, all of them, but I never shared with any of them that's what I wanted. One person called me and said, Rudi, I was on the phone with a friend of mine last night. They've got an event. It's happening in a week. Their main speaker just dropped out. Are you available? I told them you're sensational. I was like, I'm available. And there was my first speaking gig. The next one came in a very similar situation. Somebody that I had coached years before called me and said, we have an event. I loved working with you one-on-one, and I would love for you to come and impact this entire team. Are you available? Boom, next one. And then the next one. And my career took off. I had dinner last week, Friday, with arguably the number one business coach in America. And, he did 86 speaking engagements last year. He is the number one speaking business coach in America. And he did, 86. I think is what he said. I did 40 speaking engagements last year, and I'm not the number one business coach in America, but I don't have an agent like he has. I don't have 20-something books that are marketing my services all over the world. Do you see what I'm getting at? How did I create half of what he did when I didn't do any of the steps that he did to be able to get it? And it's because I aligned those 3 things, thoughts, feelings, and then my actions, updated the energy around me so it starts to draw experiences that match. What you did on a scientific level was you changed your belief in what you believed you were worthy of doing and the capacity of impact that you would be able to create. You had the thought to change and updated your body updated the energy around you. You magnetically drew people to you. And that's why you're so profoundly successful today doing this work.
Man, that is an incredible story. This is so timely. I'm sure you probably know Jim Carrey's story, right?
Yes.
So
yes. $100 million check.
Yeah. The $10 million
$10 million check.
$10 million check. But there was more to that. I didn't know this until I was, my son showed me this. He's like, hey, he goes, you know about Jim Carrey, right? About the $10 million. I was like, yeah. I was like, I've heard about that forever. He's like, there's more to that. I was like, what do you mean there's more to that? He's like, well, he actually started doing something quite profound when he was younger. And I was like, what? And he showed me this video. So he grew up poor. Everybody knows that, right? And he desperately wanted a bike. And he's just like, I just want a bike with all my friends. Like, I just would love to have a bike, but I've never had a bike. He did the exact same thing that you're talking about. He literally visualized, what would it feel like if I had a bike? What would it feel like when I'm riding my bike? What would it feel like, as I'm riding my bike with my friends, I'm feeling the wind on my face and having fun with my friends. 2 weeks later, he had a relative that bought him, like, it was a, oh my gosh, what was it called? It was a red bike. There was actually a picture of it with a banana seat and everything, but he just, it was like the coolest thing ever. So he basically, he manufactured the whole thing. And he said, I did the same thing when I wrote myself the $10 million check. I knew it was going to happen. He goes, but that was the $10 million check thing was, quite frankly, just the beginning. That mindset I have never deterred from that mindset since. The mindset is, well, if I want $20 million, or if I want this, or if I want that, well, I'm just going to completely manufacture the feelings and the thoughts that it's already happened, and exactly tangibly what it feels like when it happens. Like the whole point of what you're talking about, like walking off I'm going to be a speaker. This is what it's going to feel like. This is what it's going to feel like when I exit the stage, not when I'm on it, not when I get on it, but when I exit the stage, these very, very specific things. And then within a week you get 3 offers, right? And then you're on 40 something stages last year alone. I love that, man.
I have been in rooms where people with cancer have healed themselves within 7 days of going into their mind and curating an emotional state of healing. I have seen people get out of wheelchairs, 7 people get out of wheelchairs from debilitating either car accidents or diseases, ALS, etc., where they haven't walked in years. Stand up. I held a man's hand as he did squats in front of me, squats out of a wheelchair, who hadn't walked in 7 years. And he was probably 10 years, I forget now, but he was an ex-NFL player, and he got ALS, and he was in a wheelchair. And then I'm holding his hand. He hasn't been out of that chair without assistance in all those years, and now he's crying, he's smiling, he's laughing, and he's doing squats, and I'm holding his hand. I had no idea what he had gone through prior to that moment until he had shared it after the fact. But in that moment, that man was experiencing a miracle. Where was the miracle created? The miracle was created in the mind. My work is teaching people in the mind. I work, and I'd said this to you, that I used to only work inside of corporate America. Now I'm opening up my community to just anyone and everyone, because I want everyone to get this information. But most companies would hire me and they say, we want to make more money. Help us make more money. Help us make more profit. Help us grow here into this market or do that. And I teach these practices to the people inside the organization of, look, you can create this in your life. What if you apply this to your work? And then the revenue goes through the roof. The results are always profound and astounding, and they happen in really short bursts of time. I mean, it's unbelievable changes when a company starts to adopt this, because what people don't realize is that your thoughts, your feelings, and your energy that updates you, there's a collective energy around your family. All the people in your family, they produce a certain feeling, and that has a certain state. So your home has a certain energy. If you come and visit me, anytime people spend time in my home, they always say, man, your house feels like a breath of fresh air. Oh, your house feels like we're at a spa. Because my wife and I curate that feeling in our home. Well, companies have that. I can walk into a company. I walked into a 30,000 person organization. They were a Fortune 100 company, walked in, and within 5 minutes said to the CEO, your company is riddled with fear. She was like, what do you mean fear? I'm like, everyone in this, like there is so much fear in this company. I can feel it. It's at the door. Like I'm at reception waiting for it. I can feel fear in your building. She then proceeds to tell me, oh, they had the greatest revenue they've ever had, and now they don't know how they're going to ever beat it, and the board is expecting even more, and the stakeholders want even more, and they don't know if they can. So what happened? They went from success to fear, and I felt that just being in the energy of that environment. But what does that look like when you do that in an individual's life? Because as the person listening to this episode, if you're a father and you've got children and you're responsible for the energy of your home, for the success of the children that you're nurturing, the best way to teach is to lead by example. The best way is to change your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior, your energy. Then they're going to tap into that and be like, I don't know what happened there, but I want some of that. And then they're going to want to create that change. And then your spouse is going to be like, dude, I don't know what you're doing, but like, I want some of that. And then she's going to change. And then the more people that are sharing the same energy, it starts to create profound ripple effects. Without going into too much information, if one person holds a thought for 17 seconds, it creates enough force, enough energy to create a miracle. So you can create a healing in as little as 17 seconds. When 2 people hold on to one single thought for that same extension of time, now all of a sudden, that's 16 times more powerful. So 16 times a miracle. When 2 people add a third or a fourth, Now you're talking about your family. So let's say you've got 6 people now holding the energy of a single thought or feeling or an event. Now we're talking, I think 3 people is 32 times, 4 people is now 100 and something. And it just starts to grow and grow and grow. And we're talking about water to wine, miracles. We're not talking about something small. So what happens when you've got a sporting event for one of your kids and you get the whole family together? And we say, we're going to hold the vision of, this just being the most incredible, sporting event that you feel like you're in the flow, you feel strong, you have incredible cognitive function, you're able to see things before, like intuit what's going to happen, where the ball is going to be, what you need to do. At the end of it, we're going to jump up and down, we're going to celebrate, we're going to do Ring a Rosie, in the parking lot because you won the championship. And you guys create this feeling, this vision of what does that look like? And you all hold that feeling. The energetic print of what you've just created is profound. And now if you all of a sudden have that experience and you turn around and you say, damn, we did that for a sporting event. What would it look like if we did that for something else? And you start to build the success of what does that look like to be able to have and be and do and achieve anything. And that's what I love so much about this work.
Wow, man. Can I challenge you on something though?
Say that again?
Can I challenge you on something?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
And this is the science guy coming out at me, right? Like and I want to, there's a lot of people in the audience right now. I'd be like, whatever. Like there's no way that you can cure cancer. You can do this, you can do that. I've seen that stuff.
I've seen it.
I have too. I mean, I was in medical device sales for 18 years. I've seen miracles too. I'm like, holy crap, like this person wasn't even supposed to live. And how are they in remission? Things like that. Cause I used to, I think I spent, 9.5 years. One of the devices I sold was for end stage cancer. I'm sorry, not end stage cancer, the like mid stage, like where, the diagnosis could kind of go either way, but the diagnosis would always be like, this one's going to take a miracle. There's just no way. And then somehow they would turn around. I want to point out somebody like Christopher Reeve, who passed away quite some time ago. That guy had an incredible mindset. And if you look back at any interviews and stuff like that he's done, he was like, I will walk again. I will walk again. Like, and you heard it in his voice. He believed it with everything he had, and he never did again that I know of anyway. So, is there basically a silver lining there to where no matter how positively we think, no matter what we try to, visualize or come to fruition, it just might not happen?
No. You see, you said it earlier, right? As much as meaning he was really positive as far as Yeah, we are only ever limited by the limitation of our mind. I'm going to say that again. As you hear these words, your life, the accumulation of your life, of what you're experiencing, what you can do, can't do, all of that is purely the limitation of what you believe you're capable of achieving. You are limited purely by your mind. If somebody is in a debilitating accident, somebody I know, famous influencer, went hiking up Machu Picchu 2 weeks ago, something in his blood, and all of a sudden, the entire left side of his body is paralyzed. Doctors are saying he'll never, ever have that function of his body again. Young, healthy, strapping, good-looking guy. And doctors are saying that's it. Like he won't be able to walk, he won't have function. And he's saying, I will walk again, right? And so the difference between whether he does or he doesn't, or Christopher Reeves did or didn't, is based on whether he fully believed whether that was possible. If you believe, and I said this to you earlier, and I'm going to explain it again, but we don't have the time to go into the scientific backing of this, but I'm happy to extend this conversation at another time. The latest scientific data tells us that the energetic frequency around the human body is, in fact, the blueprint to your life, to your body. And we think that life is the physical. You take a step and you get an action. But in reality, it's you update this blueprint field, and the field updates the reality. And if you have an experience where all of a sudden you don't have the ability to walk, or if you're suffering depression or anxiety, or you have psoriasis, or you have cancer, or you have anything, you have the power and the potential at any point in time to update that energetic field, and the energetic field has to physically, by law, update the physical body. It can be no other way. But you've got to go to a place where you release the resistance to it. Most people that I work with, they're not suffering a disease. I mean, some of them are, but not all of them. The majority of people, they don't have money, or they don't have love, or they have a lot of money and they have no love. They have a lot of money and no health, but there's something that's lacking or missing. And that's always tied to an underlying unconscious belief. They have a belief around something, and that is holding them to that. So all their thoughts, all their feelings are then keeping that field to be updated to be that way. But if you can go into your mind and change your belief around it, it's eventually going to shift the energy that is around you, that blueprint, which will then alter the body. So your body will catch up. You see, what I don't like about the woo-woo that people talk about, and my work is not woo-woo, it is 100% grounded in science. This is irrefutable facts. But in woo-woo, motivation and future creation and law of attraction says, hold the thought of the bicycle and the bicycle will appear. Well, that's not true. You can't just think of a thought and then it's magically going to appear to you. Your body's going to now all of a sudden have this thing manifest next to you and you get everything that you want. What happens is everything in the entire universe is comprised of exactly the same thing, and that is energy. It's these moving particles. And when we live life, when we experience life, when we have anything or when we lose anything, it's because we have either activated or deactivated that energetic frequency in the future potential. Meaning, if Jim Carrey wants a bicycle, what he did was he thought of the bicycle, he imagined the feeling of what it would feel like to already own the bicycle, not the lack of the bicycle. Law of attraction, most people say, picture the feeling of what it would feel like at Christopher Reeves to walk again. And if he was not able to get to a place where he was already living it, not when he gets there, what it would feel like to get there, because in that, you're still in the lack. If you're thinking, oh, I can't wait to be in love, I can't wait to have money, I can't wait to have the bicycle, when I have the bicycle, I will feel like this. Well, you're in the place where you don't have it. So you're creating the energetic imprint of the lack of what you want. What I teach is to go to the end result of already having what you most aspire to have. So in my example, it was being a speaker. What would it feel like walking off stage, not being on stage, not getting the phone call to speak on stage, not the invitation, the travel, what would I talk about? The end result of already having it. So in creating the feeling of the end result, you are now living in your mind. I'm going to give you an example. Gentlemen, stick with me here for a second. If you've ever had a fantasy, a sexual fantasy that didn't exist in reality, but you pictured a scene in front of you, your body changed. Blood pumped to certain parts of your body, your palms got sweaty, your heart accelerated. In your mind, you were going, ooh la la. You open your eyes and none of what you were imagining was real. But tell your body that that wasn't real. The result of what happened wasn't real. No, it was very real. It was real in the mind. That is tapping into the end result of an emotion that had changed the physiological state of the body. A sexual fantasy is the example of the thought updating the body updating the energy. So that energy of arousal is all around you. The energy of lust is all around you because it updated that field. And it's now drawing in experience to match that. Well, what I teach is go into your mind and fantasize, not about sex, but about the thing that you want. So you fantasize in a way that your mind believes that what you are seeing is real, and it pumps blood to different parts of your body because it's so excited. And instead of it being an erection, it's your heart's pounding and racing because in your mind you're skydiving, or you're standing on stage, you've just been given an award, or you've written the best-selling book and you feel the gush and the, oh my gosh, thank you, thank you. You're doing your Oscar speech. You just broke the 1 minute mile. Whatever it is you're wanting to achieve, if you can tap into through a fantasy of the feeling of what it would feel like to already have that, then you have closed the gap on I don't have it yet. And the energy, the emotion of I don't have it yet creates gap and resistance. The feeling of I already have, I'm one with what I want, meaning you already feel it like it's already there. There's no difference between I have it or I don't. I just have it. It's me. It's a part of my life. You've now updated the field. And when you update the field and you open your eyes, well, you're in the room that you were in a minute ago, and you don't have the thing that you want. Except you need to stay in a place where you are trusting that the thought that you had has now altered the physical energy of the future of what you want. And your body will be dragged. This is the difference. Your body will be dragged to that experience because you're going to be drawn to the experience. Most people, they go into their minds and they say, I want the bike, I want the bike, I want the bike. They open it. I don't have the bike. Why don't I have the bike yet? It's so unfair. I really want the bike. And what are they creating? Resistance. Go into your mind, create the bike, feel the bike. What would it feel like to already have it? How would you look after it? What would the experience be like? What would the love be like? What would the bank account be like? What would the 9 coaching clients be like? You create the feeling of what you already want. And then when you open your eyes, stay in a place where you trust, oh, it's coming. Now I'm going to give you something that's going to be hard to swallow, but this is 100% verifiable. This 100% proof. The latest scientific data tells us that a molecule can vibrate in 2 places at the same time. Now think about what I just said. A molecule, okay, can vibrate in my body right now, but it can also vibrate in another potential at the same time. And if I create a thought in my body of exhilaration, speaking on stage, what it would feel like, and then I start to activate the future potential of that energy, that's how I book 3 speaking engagements in 1 week. That's how somebody gets out of a wheelchair who hasn't walked in, 7 to 10 years. That's how somebody cures themselves from a debilitating disease where someone says you're never going to get up again, or somebody falls in love, or in your case, went from one-on-one clients to 9 and now you're fully booked. Like it's that state. Something changed in you. You focused on something you wanted, you closed the gap of the separation, and you activated something in your future potential, and now you're met with that because your body was dragged to that result. And that's how the world works. That's 100% the meaning of life.
I love that, man. What's really fascinating about what you just said is that, Bruce Lee, I don't know if you know much about him, but, he was traumatically injured in a fight and broke his back. And doctors said that he would never walk again. And on the day his son was born, Brandon Lee, he walked for the first time. Got up out of his wheelchair. I think he took 5 steps to the bed and sat down with his wife and held Brandon. And his wife was just in awe. But he had that mind of like, oh no, this is going to happen. It will happen. Like he visualized the whole thing. The interesting thing too, just a quick personal story. I had a really bad knee injury about 1.5 years ago. And my knee was bleeding internally for about 3 months. It was crazy. And then I had surgery, and the doc told me, he's like, that was a mess. And he's like, I got to be honest, you probably won't do squats anymore. Probably won't do lunges. You're not going to run. You can walk. You can ride a bike. Don't do leg extensions, anything like that. And I really wanted to run a half marathon before I was 50. And I signed up for it. And the doc told me, you'll never run. And granted, I didn't run fast. And I gave myself only 6 weeks because I saw this half marathon and I wanted to do it before it got cold. So I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I visualized myself what it would feel like to cross that finish line and to see my kids there and what that would feel like. And here's the crazy thing. I might get a little emotional talking about this. So I trained for this thing. My time was terrible, but I did finish it. And my wife told me, she's like, hey, we're going to go, watch you cross the finish line. And I told her, and we have 4 boys. I was like, you don't do that. I was like, you don't have to do that. I was like, seriously, this thing, like standing around for a few hours with kids outside, like at the finish line, that sounds horrible for them and you. I was like, please don't. I'm just doing this for me. Well, come to find out, and I'll flip this real quick. I'm going to just flip my camera, but these signs right here, my kids made these. My wife took them out of our house, took them to a restaurant where they made these things, and I crossed the finish line, and there they were. And then afterwards, my wife sent me these. I was like, I didn't expect for you guys to be here. And when did you make these signs? And then my wife showed me all these photos of all 4 boys sitting down, making these signs in a Panera restaurant. And I couldn't believe that. And so I went for my follow-up, and the doc was like, how you feeling? I was like, yeah, I ran a half marathon. He's like, no, you didn't. I was like, no, I did. He's like, how did you do that? I was like, I put my mind to it. That was my answer to him. And he's like, well, holy shit. He's like, that's great, man. And, but it's interesting you talk about all these visualizations, because anything that I can be celebrating in the past year, especially, like, I can point it back to the things that I have visualized, felt, put energy behind. It's been really fascinating. And your interview right here really put a bow on that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I want to touch on something you said a moment ago, because you said what the majority of people think. You were like, oh, all of this, woo-woo stuff is a load of BS. And then you just validated everything that I teach through the story that you just shared, and then underscored it by saying everything that you achieved this year and all the success that you've had, if you were to look at it, you'd be able to attribute it to exactly the same thing. And so it's the greatest testimonial to the work that I do. And I was not even involved in it. It's you understanding the value in the work, and what does it look like to be very careful. I say to people all the time, there's 2 ways to live your life. You can live your life by default, reacting to everything and just walking into a room and reacting to how you're going to be in that room and what's going to happen. Or you can very carefully, calculatedly, intentionally plan, who do you want to be? I am by far the happiest, most successful person I know. And I don't measure success by money. I measure success by how I feel, by whether my wife and my kids want to spend time with me, about where I go, what do I do, and the freedom and the flexibility I have to be able to do that. And all of that is curated, carefully, calculatedly planned. My greatest joy is seeing people who say to me, oh, the stuff is woo-woo, especially some guy who's really buff and says, I don't believe in this stuff. And then at the end of it, they're like, I'm the happiest I've ever been. Like, I've never believed my life could be this full and this fast. And it happens every single time. It is beautiful. And I'm so glad that you said it, because I could just imagine how many people are listening to this right now thinking, man, what, I've done that. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. And so that they will now intentionally do it again.
I agree. And I think my biggest miss up until about a year ago was always there was that part of me that didn't believe. I would say it out loud, and I would be like, yes, it's this. But there was that part of me that's like, hopefully, but it's very different when you visualize everything, feel it, think it. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What am I seeing? What am I feeling? Like, really, really getting grounded into that experience. It's made all the difference. So,
what's interesting is when you study marathon runners, people running marathons, they run, and as they get to the finish line, they start wobbling, the legs give out, they fall before they cross the finish line, and they have to be dragged over. It happens time and time and time again. And first-time marathon runners. And so when interviewed and asked, like, what happened? What was your process? What was your training? What was your preparation? They say they visualized the Coca-Cola banner that they run through, right? People imagine the ribbon that you have to cross. And so the minute they take the turn and they start to see the finish line, the body packs up, gives up, and they drop down, and they cannot go, like, not even 3 or 4 steps further. The body shuts down. Because what happened was the brain associated the end of that, the excruciating running 26 miles, the end of that result was seeing that sign, not crossing the sign. The difference between imagining running through the ribbon or through the archway, or imagining on the other side getting the actual trophy or the medallion that says congratulations. If you visualize that, you'll run all the way through, because you've conditioned your body that the end is on the other side. But people that stopped before, they just visualized seeing the end. And so you really have to look at that. That's a physical manifestation. It's a physical result of what you curated in your mind. You could run for 26 miles without stopping, and then all of a sudden, the last 200 feet, your legs start to wobble and you fall over and you can't walk and you've got to be dragged. What's the difference? And the difference is, what did you think and plan and curate in your mind?
So true, man. That is so true. I've sat here and I thought about the things I haven't finished in that same thing. Haven't crossed the finish line completely, but came really, really close. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. I could talk to you all day, but I want to make sure that the audience can find you and find everything that you're doing. So what's the best place for them to do that?
Firstly, I just want to say thank you for your time and for an incredible conversation, Larry. I love you, brother. You're doing such amazing good work, and I just really appreciate you and I value you. I'm going to beg your audience to do me a huge favor today, and I want them to rate and review your podcast. I want them to right now, as they listen to this, smash 5 stars and give a review and just share something that you've learned from Larry, because as podcasters, the easiest barrier for entry for an audience, because you're getting this information for free, is just to say thank you by giving somebody 5 stars. And if you follow Larry and you love the show, then give him that gift, because that helps him spread his message. So do that favor for me today, and just share some love for the guy, because he's doing such great work. I am at rudirekstins.com. So that's RUDIRIEKSTINS, rudirekstins.com. Same at Instagram. I'm doing something I've never done before. And in February of 2025, I am launching for the first time a community, and it is a minimally like $500 a year barrier to entry. To work with me individually is well over $100,000. And the average person does not have the ability to work with me at that level, because the majority of my work is going into companies and supporting large groups of people. But I have such need and demand for people to work with me on a one-on-one basis that I've now decided I'm going to open up the exact same content I teach somebody for $100,000, $200,000. I'm going to teach for $500, but I'm going to do it in a group format through my community. This is not to take away from anybody else's community. This is simply an opportunity for somebody to log in, to listen to a training on a topic, for me to give the science, the data, the evidence behind it, the tools, the techniques, and then for them to be able to ask questions and say, man, I tried this didn't work. Why not? So that we can start to up level and improve the quality of our lives. My hope and intention is that anybody that resonates with anything that I've had to say today goes to my website, clicks the link, and joins the community. It's going to be one of the most inspiring places on earth for just anybody and everybody to live their highest and greatest potential. I contemplated doing it for free, but my wife reminded me that my first 7 years of my career as a coach was for free. I was in corporate America. I made a ton of money. I didn't need the money. And so I literally just helped people, but their lives never changed. And then when I got furloughed from that corporate job because of the world events, I had to charge. I was forced to start charging. And the same people that I'd coached for 7 years for free, whose lives never changed, they changed overnight when they started to pay. Because when you pay attention. And so the $500 is literally just to make sure that you show up, so that you say, you know what, I put some money into that. I should probably go and see what that's all about. Included in that is going to be courses, meditations, exercises. But I guarantee you, if you are looking to live the highest and the greatest potential, you're going to find it inside of that community. There will be a beautiful, beautiful group of people to support you.
I love that, man. Well, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes for you. Head on over to the dadedge.com/526. Again, the dadedge.com/526. I have to pause here for a second. I just got a text from another person asking me if I have any one-on-one client spots. As we're doing this podcast. I don't know, man. It's like it's the universe, man. And it's the thought. It's the manufacturing of these things. You know, I just love this. I never really understood it, quite frankly, until you just unpacked it. Because I keep asking my wife. I was like, why is this happening? Why does this keep happening? She's like, I don't know. Just keep doing what you're doing. But thank you for this, man. Thank you, Rudi. This was awesome.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate the opportunity, brother. Thank you.
Back at you.